Well, that's one of those sights you just have to stop and try to record to share with everybody when you see them, right? First light in the morning, a remote lake, a bit of a breeze, fog and mist and reflection, dead silence. How's that for a stump? Check out this stump. That's a big tree. I'm actually juggling a 10-foot rod, a 13-foot rod, a tripod, and my underwater camera set up through this shit. Almost there. The last time I snuck in here, man, look at these elk trails. Serious elk trail right there. Anyway, last time I snuck in here, tried to get Sarah in here and get her first steelhead. There was 2 guys in here already, and they're actually fighting one when I come up over the rise. So this time I got up 5 in the morning, drove over an hour, and I have a feeling I might be the first one here. I am probably going to catch one. If I do, I'll probably get it on video. If I do that, it's going to be frickin' awesome. Share with everybody and relive it a million times. Here I am. Nobody's here. It's the first place I ever got a steelhead on the floating camera. There we are. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out how to get across this river. It's a little too much water to fish from the side. And I walked right on top of a frickin' bear den. I'm gonna sneak back there and show you guys. Why not? This is gonna be good. Almost there. It's gonna go up. I gotta get onto the end of those logs right there. Very gingerly. This is where it's going to begin.
So I decided I'm going to go with the brand new single action first because I haven't got a steelhead with it yet, so it's first in line. I'm going to try that, and I'm going to try this single bead. See what happens. Got one. Oh. This is a beauty. Oh, he's hooked up in a branch. Oh my God, he just went under a log about 40 yards downriver and I got him out. Yes! Awesome! What a beauty! Oh my God! Yes! How freaking cool is that? Yeah! There he goes! That feels so good. All you steelhead fishermen out there, You know exactly what that feels like, right? Alright, this camera says it's got 2 hours left in that battery. But I got the other camera back in the truck. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to let this pool cool off a little bit. But I don't want to leave. It's a bugger to get in here, so I'm going to share a couple emails for a minute and get up out of this water a bit, because I'm starting to get a bit of a chill, but I'm going to share some more voices while I'm here, just to freak myself out while I'm here. It's kind of funny, that's a broken off stick. Basically right at the mouth of that bear den. Almost looks like somebody broke it off to jam it in that hole. I don't know why anybody would do that, but kind of odd. Now, who do we got waiting to be heard? Besides everybody, half the planet. Okay, I'll mark this as... No, hold on, let's start promoting the channel. Alright, what's this one? This looks like a fair size email, so hopefully the steelhead want to bite after I'm done this one. Steve, the first email I sent had some spelling and grammar errors. Also, it missed some aspects that I wanted to highlight, so I'm resending it to you. This one might be a little long, but I feel it's necessary to teach my experiences and how I've discovered what might be the best way to break the ice with others and open up the subject of what I call the others. Among these phenomena I've experienced a white black-eyed being Sasquatch and amber orbs. I'll do my best to recall where all these occurrences happened. Let's start with my dad. He hunted the Blue Mountains in Oregon, in the Mount Emily unit. He always told me that there is no such thing as Sasquatch. I believed this until high school when I started hearing more stories of this being. It was the spring of 2009 when I was hunting turkey in the White River unit out of Pine Grove, Oregon when I was 19 years old. I walked down toward the White River Canyon and was resting against an oak tree at the edge of a small meadow. It was around noon. The weather was beautiful with birds and squirrels actively making noise. West of my position up the canyon, I heard a loud guttural scream. The woods were silent. I did my best to look at the edge of the meadow to see what it was, but I could not see it. I chose to walk directly back up the hill to camp. The woods remained quiet for another 30 minutes. I count this as my first experience. I knew at that point there was something else sharing the woods we did not know about. 2013, I was turkey hunting in the spring with my buddies, Doug and Alan. We had committed to backpack up to the top of this knob to find unpressured birds. We managed to hunt 1.5 miles until we made camp at the edge of a rancher's land. Being young, we thought it would be a good idea to wind up the fence to make it easier to cross, so we might hunt the backside of that property along the fence line. After this, we split up from our camp and set out to kill a tom. I dropped down the backside of camp through a steep draw and began climbing up the other side. I found a flat portion on the hillside where I could cross the fence I was walking along. As I straddled the fence wire, I looked down and noticed some long, reddish-colored hair tangled in the barbed wire. I grabbed a strand that was 8 inches long. The hair was soft and frizzy. I thought about it possibly being a bear, but I considered my time interning with a taxidermist. I did not recall bears being brought in having hair that long. Then I thought about the scream from 2009 and thought, it's a Sasquatch. I went back to camp and showed my buddies the hair, and they concluded that it had to be a horsehair. They directed me to the fence where I could find horsehair to compare this to. In my comparison, I noticed the hair I found and the horsehair on the fence were different. The color of the hair I found different, and the horsehair was coarse, where the hair I found was soft. Anyways, I ultimately dropped the hair on the ground and went about the rest of the hunt. But this hunt was going to get real scary. That night after finding the hair, my buddy Doug and I relaxed by the fire and drank some booze. We're having a good time, and Doug started going off about the hair I found. He said, "You think that Sasquatch exists? Why don't we have any more evidence?" He then proceeded to stand up and yell at the top of his lungs into the forest, "There is no such thing as Sasquatch. If there's a Sasquatch here, show yourself." He screamed this into the darkness when the fence we had wound up suddenly started unwinding about 50 feet in front of Doug. He ran to Alan and they cowered by the fire. I stood up full of booze and yelled, "Get the F out of here!" I stood my ground and got big. The woods got quiet and I returned to the fire to drink some more. Doug and Alan tried to find whatever it was that unwound the fence using a flashlight, but nothing was seen. To this day, Doug and Alan will tell you the fence just unwound itself, but I still find it strange that it happened right as Doug was challenging the Sasquatch. 2017, it was late summer, in the Hepner unit. My buddy Luke and I were hunting elk with our bows off the 2107 road by Penland Lake. This hunt and the hunts that followed have led me to call these woods the Black Forest of Oregon. Luke and I backpacked in 1.5 miles up the gated 2107 road. We found a spot right off the gravel to set up camp. That night we slept in hammocks. It was the first night we heard a tree fall about 100 yards up the hill from us. I've been in the woods since the age of 4. I've never heard a tree fall naturally. I didn't think much of it. However, I definitely thought something was fishy when the next day we had another tree fall some 80 yards from us while we were scaling the hill on the other side of the road from camp. And I became even more suspicious when 2 more trees fell around camp that second night. I spent the weekend looking for an abundance of diseased or damaged trees, but they all looked healthy and normal. Yeah, I can relate to that one. I had about 8 trees get pushed over, fall over in one night while I was camping alone elk hunting up in northern BC 2 falls ago. Kind of sucked. Whatever. 2017, 2 weeks later, my brother Thomas and I backpacked into the same spot as 2 weeks prior. This time, though, I was determined to sleep in a tent. All the trees falling before had me a little rattled. My brother and I set up camp in the dark and got some sleep the first night. We headed out the next morning and put in a good hunt. Around 11 a.m., we returned to camp. While eating lunch, I sat on a log facing camp. My brother was digging in the bag of food we brought up. In this moment, I heard a light thump. I turned to my right and saw something moving quickly and not making any noise. No matter how hard I tried, I could not get it in my vision. It was like a black blurry thing that I just couldn't get in focus. I turned to my brother and asked if he heard or saw what I just experienced, and he said no. I felt a little loony, but I blew it off. That night, Thomas and I were walking back to camp after sitting on a pond for the evening hunt. We were approximately 80 yards from camp when we both heard something running from our camp through the trees away from us. It sounded like bipedal. We noted it was around 100 yards up the hill when it stopped making noise. Thomas and I chose to play music on his phone as loud as possible to make our presence known. If there's a lion or a bear, we thought the unnatural sounds would drive it away from camp. We stayed up till 11 p.m. Blaring music. At this point, we went to bed. Prior to committing to sleep, we positioned the bikes we rode in a U around the tent to offer some separation between whatever was out there and us. It's funny how some of those subtle maneuvers can give us that weird sense of secureness when meanwhile it doesn't do anything really. It's funny how people do that. Sarah made me do that one time, made me move the vehicle right tight to the side of the tent, her side of the tent one night we were camping. Whatever works. As I laid there, I couldn't sleep. I was on high alert. All we had was 145 pistol between the two of us. I listened and began hearing what sounded like small rocks hitting the tree above our tent. It was about every 10 minutes I would hear that sound. Not any other tree, just the one right by our tent. This continued through the night. Around 1 a.m. I fell asleep. My brother happened to wake up and he heard this thing walking in front of our tent. He stayed awake a while longer but eventually fell back asleep. I woke up around 4 a.m. and went back to listen to the gentle sound of small rocks hitting the tree by our tent. It was around 4:30 a.m. when I heard a new sound. It was something walking across the gravel road toward camp. I could hear the rocks shifting under its feet. I continued listening. I now was hearing the pine needles crunching and shifting as it drew closer to our tent. At this point, I was putting my hand on the .45 and was preparing to fight for my life. Then it got real weird. The thing that crossed the road stopped and let out a horrifying roar at something in our camp. I now recognized the thing as a mountain lion, and I could hear it turning away from camp and leaving across the road. By the time I heard the lion on the gravel, I could hear a new series of sounds from the right side of the tent, some 10 yards away. It was the sounds of wood breaking and limbs cracking. This went on for about a minute. I didn't hear any growls or grunts, just wood breaking and splintering. Everything got quiet. And 20 minutes or so passed, then I heard the small rocks start hitting the tree again. My brother and I woke up around 6 a.m. and remained in the tent till 8 a.m. We were waiting for the sun to be high in the sky before we stepped out to assess the scene. I looked for an abundance of small rocks around the tree, but I found it difficult to assess rock abundance in the forest. After this, I investigated the trees by camp. I was just beginning to study the limbs when my brother yelled at me to come over and see what he found. In the needles were 3 tracks, approximately 8 feet from the door of the tent. The last track in the series was a size 13 print with obvious toe impressions. I took a picture and instructed my brother to pack up. We're getting out of here. We left, but it wasn't my last time hunting elk in there. 2 weeks later, Luke and I were back out on the Hepner unit chasing elk around the 21707 road. After the events of 2 weeks prior, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. After the events of 2 weeks prior, I told Luke we were going to camp near Ditch Creek Ranger Station off the main road. We did several hunts into that area and saw lots of elk, but it wasn't until the last evening of the trip that we stumbled into more Sasquatch activity. We hiked west of camp till we hit a fence line that led to a wallow. We hunted this area all day till it was dusky. We walked from here back to camp. We're using a horse trail that skirted a meadow to navigate our way back. At this meadow, we began hearing crashing and banging across the way, accompanied with whoops and grunts. For some reason, I was feeling bold, so I began to slowly walk toward the forest line to see if I could spot one of these things. Let me get out of the way of the camera for a little bit there. I was halfway across the meadow when Luke urged us to go to daylight running low. I was persuaded to follow his lead and stop pushing in on these unknown sounds. We made it back to camp, and that concluded our 2017 archery season. Now I knew there was Sasquatch in those woods. 2018. It was late summer in 2018. Luke and I were back at it, archery hunting elk off the 2107 road in the Hepner unit. This time, we would hike back even further. Luke and I wound up on a swale creek where we located a horse trail that runs along the creek into a large meadow with several elk wallows. Along the first trail, we found an old camp. We decided to make this home for the week. As the days wore on up there, I would use the downtime to find loose barbed wire in the woods. I used this barbed wire to begin constructing a fence around our camp. Luke gave me a hard time, and I would point out I'm building a Sasquatch fence. Well, I guess I was, even though it wasn't big enough to keep those things out. It was day 5 of our hunt. Luke and I put on 10 miles that day, covering the land from Swale Creek to Drift Creek, and eventually completing the circle, walking back on the 2107 road. There's a lot of hiking, and I was planning on resting the remainder of the day in camp. Luke chose to pursue a big bull that was frequenting the hill above camp. Luke left around 5 p.m. I sat in my chair for another 30 minutes when I decided to start making some dinner. I was standing at the kitchen in camp. It's a board between 2 trees, making some mountain house in the jet boil. From the kitchen, I'm facing north up toward the meadow where the horse trail enters. Approximately 60 yards from where I was standing, there was a stump. I had my hat on facing my work. The bill of my hat obscured my eyes from being seen as long as I kept facing the food I was preparing. From the top of my vision, I saw a black, hairy thing come from the forest to the stump. It never made a sound, maneuvering through the trees. I thought to myself, am I seeing this? It was a very odd moment in time where I could see this thing behind the stump looking at me. I didn't quite know what it was. I kept my head down, but my eyes rolled up so I could study this thing. It wasn't a bear, it wasn't a lion, it wasn't an ape. It simply wasn't anything I'd seen in the woods before or at a zoo. To describe it, I saw it was covered in black hair from head to toe, but it had a face like a man's, yet it was different. The brow was heavy, the cheekbones were pronounced, the nose was broad and flat, and the eyes were black and appeared sunk back in the socket. I recall the skin was visible from its forehead to the cheeks and a strip to the chin. The skin was black though, like charcoal. I noted it was pushing its back against the stump and rotating its head over its right shoulder to look at me. As a result of its posture, I saw the shoulders were slightly cockeyed, like I was not yet seeing how broad its shoulders were. I will tell you, I was at first confused as to what I was looking at, but in time I began to figure out what it was. I was looking at a Sasquatch. I stood there with my head down and eyes rolled up. I was becoming more uneasy. I also knew at some point I had to show this guy that I see him, and the game is over. It took everything I had to commit to making purposeful eye contact. When I did, we both just stared at each other. It lasted 3 to 5 seconds, but it was confirmation. Upon confirmation that I'm looking at a Sasquatch and it's looking at me. Sasquatch turned his head around to face away from me. I recall it looked like it was panicking. Those shoulders bulging out on both sides of the stump told me that this critter was way bigger than it looks. The shoulders rose up and down 2 times, and the Sasquatch rolled into the thick cover across from where it first entered the trail. They moved so fast, and for once didn't make sound. And just like that, I'm in the club of no return. I can never unsee that, and I can never undo the terror I felt immediately after it got into the thick trees. My biggest question after it left my sight was, what does this beast want? Why was it watching me? Is it circling back to do something? Is Luke okay? All this and more all at once. Oh, I hear a logging truck now in the distance. Thought I heard something behind me. You want to freak yourself out, go remote, Vancouver around, and start reading these damn stories. With the rainforest be all around you. All this and more all at once, it's overwhelming. Luke found me in camp that night with all the lanterns turned on, and one hand carrying my 45 and the other hand pushing the button on my Hoochie Mama elk call. It was a sight to behold. After Luke and I sat down for dinner, I asked him if he was playing a prank on me. He looked at me with puzzled expression and said, "No, you heard me blowing the bugle up the hill. How could I be in 2 places at once?" He was right. I told him what happened, and he looked at the fire, drank some whiskey, and said, "I wish you hadn't told me that." For this experience, I believe the Sasquatch I saw was a juvenile. It was only 5'8" at most, but very broad shoulders. Steve, you have a video you did featuring the photos from a First Nation friend. Those photos, that's exactly what I saw. It looked exactly like that. I've seen so many Bigfoot videos / pictures, and what I saw looked similar. But it wasn't what the mainstream thinks Sasquatch looks like. It was a man. That wasn't a man. Like you say, they are wild men. Let me read that sentence one more time. It was a man. That wasn't a man. Like you say, they are wild men. To the initial point I made about telling people about Sasquatch experiences, I find the best way to start off with that conversation is asking the question, what do you think about Sasquatch? Depending on the person's reaction will dictate if you want to engage in conversation about your experiences or maybe not waste your time. Yeah, that'll work. I usually just look people in the eyes and ask them how long they've been in the bush, how long they go to work for, or whatever, and then I just say, you ever seen anything or heard anything kind of weird in the bush before that you can't explain? That usually draws it out. There's no laughing involved. If you use laughter when you're talking about this topic, nobody's going to say shit if they know. They just aren't. By asking that question, I've heard 3 co-workers tell me their encounters with this beast. One tried to shoot him, one did shoot him, and the other was intimidated by him. There are a lot more people in this world who have experienced Sasquatch or something in the other category than we know. All you have to do is ask. Stay safe, keep up the fight for truth. Sincerely, Nick Marlowe. P.F. If you would like me to send pics of the track, let me know. Yeah, man, you know what? I mean, pictures of tracks, for me, I don't do anything. I've seen these things. I'm good. But everybody else, I think, on here wants to see the track, so sure, send them in, man. You send me whatever you want, and I'll share it with the people, all right? It's not about it's not about me. It's not about what I want or don't want to see. So, I'm the conduit, all right? You guys share everything you want through me. Okay, I got this other email attached to the bottom of that one. And it's the same one. It's probably your first one, all right, man? Okay, I got it. I got it. I absolutely appreciate you sending that in. And like I said earlier, you guys heard me say it lots of times before. Elk and these beings go hand in hand. You may want to watch some of David Plattis' shows. Listen to him. He knows a lot more about these beings than probably anybody. But if you watch him, he's somewhat moved on, right? He's moved on up to another shelf of knowledge that interests him, and that he is interested in finding the bottom, finding out what the hell's going on when it comes to missing people. And it's not just about these beings, so I can easily say that when it comes to what David's looking to do. Anyway. Alright, I gotta get my focus back on what I'm doing, get my focus back on having fun, looking down, not looking around. And that is one way, that's one thing that I do commonly to ensure that I will stay out here like where I am right now and other places and enjoy it. You'll never, ever, ever not think about these beings ever after you see one. Ever. I would be lying if I didn't admit that I had somewhat anxiety my whole drive. Last night going to bed because I know where I'm going. My entire drive in the dark, leave at 5 in the morning. I've got that a little bit of anxiety and hesitance to do what I'm doing right now. And then when I'm getting all my gear ready in the truck and I'm first jumping into the forest. But once I get in here, I'm good. I don't know why. A calm comes about me once I get into the forest, as compared to me freaking myself out the night before, or during the drive in the dark, or the hike in the dark. Even the hike in the dark isn't that bad for me. I don't know why. It's just, once I get out here, I'm good. As long as I mind my own business, concentrate on what I'm doing, concentrate on having fun and pulling off what I'm trying to do, and minding my own business. I think that's why, for the most part, I get to do this. I'm sure it's going to happen again. Something usually happens to me every few months, right? But I just don't want. I'm not craving a face-to-face in broad daylight, in your face, and then I got 3 hours to get back to the vehicle through hell, through all this shit. I don't want that. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. The outcome is never, ever good, you know? And I don't want this ruined for me. So I try not to really look hard to see if anything's watching me. I try not to do that. I just try to focus on what I'm doing, be aware. I try to be aware normally anyway because of cats. The odd bear, like look at that, I just about stepped in that frickin' bear den on the other side over there in the timber. I didn't see any Warren trail coming in and out of it, but I mean, there could be a bear in there sound asleep right now. Who knows? I'm not worried about the black bears around here, but you just don't need your leg going in a bear den. I don't care who you are. There's a chance that it might not end so well. But anyway, that being said, I do stay on guard all the time, but I'm not trying to specifically see something peeking at me, watch me fish. You want to watch me fish? Go ahead. Watch me fish. I don't give a shit. Just leave me alone. Forgot one more mention, besides thanking again to you for sending in your experiences, is the amount of, there's a lot goes on with elk hunters in North America, a lot. And it's not just related to these beings, it's related to possibly something else that comes from up there, alright? Might sound a little crazy to some, but unfortunately it's a reality. Didn't make it up, not my fault. It's been looked into extensively by Dave Plattis and other people, and that's just the fact. But another strong fact is these beings and elk go hand in hand, and there's elk all around here. There's elk trails all around here, and actually we saw them running across the river right here. Last winter we drifted down here in a rubber raft. But there are elk all around me here right now, coincidentally. So that does, always take note of that. Always take note whether or not there's elk around you during your outdoor activities. That's what I'm trying to share, all right? If there is, Just keep your senses highlighted a little bit more, maybe, possibly. I don't know, okay? Okay, here I go. See if I can catch another fish.